Every single move you make, every memory you pull up, even the thought you're having right now, it's all powered by electricity. Not the kind from a wall socket, of course, but this incredible biological spark that's constantly crackling through your nervous system. So today, we're going to dig in and unpack the fundamental code of this animal electricity.
All right, so let's just jump right in with the question. What do a lightning strike and a single thought really have in common? Well, the answer is electricity. Now, for centuries, this was a totally wild, even controversial idea, but it turns out to be the very foundation of how our brains and our bodies communicate.
So, where did this whole idea even come from? Well, our story kicks off in the late 18th century with the discovery that was, let's just say, both a little gruesome and absolutely revolutionary.
Okay, so back in 1794, this guy, Luigi Galvani, touches an exposed nerve in a frog's leg with an electrical source. And he just watches, totally amazed, as the leg twitches like crazy. His big idea was that nerves and muscles must run on some kind of animal electricity. But, for over 100 years, people argued about it. Was the electricity in the cells, or were they just getting zapped? It wasn't until 1934 that scientists like H.K. Hartline really started to crack the code.
And cracking that code, well, that meant answering some really fundamental questions. It's one thing to know there's electricity flowing around. It's a whole other thing to figure out what it's actually saying. This was the central mystery, right? If it's all just little electrical spikes, how does your brain tell the difference between a gentle touch and a hard push, or a dim light versus a super bright one? To figure this out, Hartline turned to a really strange and ancient creature, the horseshoe crab.
So by recording these electrical signals from a horseshoe crab's optic nerve, Hartline discovered three profound, game-changing rules about these signals, which we now call action potentials. First, they're all or nothing. It's like a light switch. It's either completely on or completely off. No dimmers. Second, they are unbelievably fast, like 1,000th of a second fast. And third, and this is the real key, they use frequency to code for how intense something is.
And this is it. This is where we solve the mystery. A stronger stimulus, like a brighter light, it doesn't create a bigger electrical spike. No way. The spikes are always the exact same size. That's that all-or-nothing rule. Instead, a brighter light just makes the neuron fire more often. So you get a slow pulse for a dim light and a rapid fire pulse for a bright light. That's frequency coding, and it's how your entire nervous system communicates intensity. So cool.
Okay, so if a neuron fires these all-or-nothing signals, how does it get ready to fire in the first place? How does it just sit there waiting for the command to go?
Well, the answer is something called the resting potential. Scientists figured this out by very carefully inserting a microscopic electrode into a neuron. And what they found was that even when the cell is just at rest, doing nothing, there's a constant electrical charge across its membrane. To be specific, the inside of the cell is about -60 millivolts compared to the outside. Now, that number can vary a little. It's not set in stone, but the thing that's always true is that the inside is negative compared to the outside. That's the neuron's default state.
Honestly, the best way to think about this resting potential is to just picture a tiny, charged battery. It's holding on to this small bit of electrical potential, just sitting there, fully charged and ready to go in an instant.
So how does this tiny battery go from just sitting there to actually firing that all-or-nothing spark? Well, it all comes down to hitting a critical tipping point. And that tipping point has a name. It's called the threshold. So imagine you're sitting at that resting state of -60 millivolts. An incoming signal might nudge that voltage up a little, making it a bit more positive. But if it gets nudged just enough to hit that specific level, the threshold, it kicks off a chain reaction that is absolutely unstoppable. It's the point of no return.
And this sequence is literally everything. A small stimulus comes in, causes a tiny little flutter. If it's too weak, nothing happens. It's a dud. But if that stimulus is strong enough to push the neuron right to its threshold, it's like lighting a fuse. Boom! An unstoppable, full-blown action potential fires off. And for just a split second, the cell's charge flips from negative to positive before it resets itself.
Okay, but what's actually creating that -60 millivolt resting potential? What is keeping that battery charged all the time? The answer lies in this microscopic tug-of-war between two really simple chemical ions.
So, the two main players here are potassium, that's K+, and sodium, Na+. At rest, your neurons are just packed full of potassium, while the fluid outside is loaded with sodium. Now, if you remember your basic chemistry, you know that things always want to move from where there's a lot of them to where there's not so much. So potassium wants to get out of the cell, and sodium is desperately trying to get in.
So get this, that stable -60 millivolt charge, it's not static at all. It's actually a super dynamic balance. This tense equilibrium created by the constant outward push of potassium and the constant inward pull of sodium.
You know, way back in 1902, a physiologist named Julius Bernstein had the key insight. He basically figured that the cell membrane must be mostly open to potassium. And since potassium ions are positively charged, as they leak out of the cell, they leave behind a net negative charge inside. I mean, what a brilliant piece of detective work. And Bernstein was almost totally right. The pull of potassium is definitely the main force here. But the cell membrane isn't perfectly sealed against sodium. A tiny amount of those positive sodium ions are always managing to sneak into the cell. And that small sodium leak pushes back against the potassium just enough to make the final voltage settle at around -60 millivolts, instead of a little lower.
So here's the key number, the main takeaway. At rest, the neuron's membrane is about 100 times more permeable to potassium than it is to sodium. For every 100 potassium ions that can move freely, only one single sodium ion can squeeze through. This incredibly lopsided setup is what keeps that delicate electrical balance, keeping the battery charged and ready.
This delicate 100-to-1 balance is a secret to your nervous system's readiness. It keeps every single one of your neurons primed and waiting. So the big question is, what happens when a signal arrives and that balance is instantly and catastrophically shattered? Well, that's the story of the action potential itself.